The summer of 1776 had barely ended when the British turned their eyes northward again, determined to finish what they had started years before. Sir Guy Carleton, the steady, methodical governor of Canada, had spent the warm months building a fleet. 3 large warships sent from England were disassembled below the rapids of the St. Lawrence, hauled overland on rollers, and rebuilt at St. John's. 20 gunboats and more than 200 flat-bottomed transports followed. By September, Carleton had 700 picked seamen and gunners ready, and an army of 12,000 men, British regulars, Hessians, Canadians, and Indians poised to sweep down Lake Champlain, seize the Hudson River corridor, and slice New England off from the rest of the rebellion. Against this juggernaut stood Benedict Arnold. Wounded at Quebec the previous winter, he had returned to the lakes with ferocious energy. All summer his carpenters felled trees in the Vermont forests, while sailmakers and gunners hurried up from Connecticut and Massachusetts. By late September he had scraped together a tiny squadron, 3 schooners, 2 sloops, 3 galleys, and 8 gondolas, 70 guns in all, manned by whoever would volunteer. It was no match for Carleton's armada in numbers or firepower, but Arnold understood something deeper. He could not stop the invasion outright. He could delay it, bleed it, make every mile cost the enemy time and men. Delay was victory when winter was coming. He chose his ground with care. On October 11 he anchored his little fleet between Valker Island and the western shore of the lake. The position was perfect, both flanks protected. The British could only approach head-on. Carleton's squadron appeared that afternoon. The battle opened at 11 o'clock and raged without pause for 7 brutal hours. Cannon smoke hung thick over the water. Grape and round shot tore through hulls and rigging. Arnold's flagship Congress took a pounding. His second in command, the Royal Savage, was set ablaze and abandoned. Yet the Americans fought with desperate skill. When darkness fell, the British drew off, expecting to finish the job at dawn. Arnold had other plans. Under cover of a foggy night he slipped his crippled vessels past the enemy line one by one. Silent as ghosts, they rode and sailed through the darkness, patched leaks on the move, and made for Crown Point. Carleton woke to an empty lake. He pursued, caught the stragglers, burned what he could capture, but the bulk of Arnold's force escaped. The invasion slowed. Carleton reached Crown Point, but winter was closing in. Supplies were thin, the season too late for a push to Ticonderoga. He withdrew to Canada, leaving the strategic corridor intact for another year. That delay proved fatal to British hopes. While Arnold's lake fight bought precious time, another British column was already moving. Lieutenant Colonel Barry St. Ledger had marched from Oswego with 800 regulars, Tories, and Iroquois under Joseph Brant. His target was Fort Stanwix on the Mohawk River, the key to the valley. If Stanwix fell, the Mohawk would open, threatening Albany from the west while Burgoyne descended from the north. St. Ledger reached the fort in early August. The garrison, about 700 men under Colonel Peter Gansevoort, refused to surrender. St. Ledger settled in for a siege, but the Americans had an unexpected ally, the Oneida Indians, who remained loyal to the Patriot cause. They kept the fort informed and harassed the besiegers. Then came Oriskany. On August 6, a relief column of 800 Tryon County militia under General Nicholas Herkimer marched to raise the siege. They walked straight into an ambush in a wooded ravine. Joseph Brant's Mohawks and the Tory Rangers struck from both sides. The fighting was savage, hand-to-hand in smoke so thick men could barely see. Herkimer was shot through the leg, propped against a tree, and continued directing the battle while his pipe clenched in his teeth. But a sudden thunderstorm broke the slaughter. Both sides drew apart. The militia limped home, bloodied but unbroken. St. Ledger's Indians, shaken by the ferocity, began drifting away. The real blow fell soon after. Benedict Arnold, now hurrying east from Ticonderoga, reached Fort Stanwix with a small force and a clever ruse. He spread rumors that a vast American army was coming thousands strong. The Indians believed it. One night they vanished en masse, leaving St. Ledger almost alone. On August 22, the British commander burned his camp and fled back to Oswego, pursued by mocking Oneidas who ambushed stragglers and murdered them in the woods. The Mohawk Valley stayed in American hands. Far to the east, the main British army under John Burgoyne was already advancing. Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne had left Canada in June with 7,000 regulars, 4,000 Hessians and Tories, and a train of artillery and camp followers that stretched for miles. He took Ticonderoga almost without a fight when the Americans evacuated in panic. Then the march slowed. The army hacked through wilderness, built bridges over creeks, corduroyed swamps. Supplies lagged. Horses died. Burgoyne's glittering uniforms grew dusty and torn. At Bennington in August, Burgoyne sent a detachment of Hessians and Tories, about 1,200 men, to seize American stores. They met John Stark and 1,500 New Hampshire and Vermont militia instead. On August 16, the militia attacked in a driving rain. The Hessians formed square, fired volleys, but the Americans flanked them, broke them, killed or captured nearly the entire force. Burgoyne lost a tenth of his army in a single afternoon, and the myth of British invincibility suffered another wound. By September, Burgoyne reached the Hudson above Saratoga. Across the river waited Horatio Gates, newly appointed to command the Northern Department. Gates had replaced Philip Schuyler, whose enemies in New England had finally forced Congress to act. Schuyler took the demotion with grace, offering Gates every assistance. Gates ignored him. The two armies faced each other for weeks. Then, on September 19, Burgoyne attacked at Freeman's Farm. The fighting was confused, bloody, indecisive. Daniel Morgan's riflemen picked off British officers with deadly accuracy. Arnold, though technically under arrest for earlier quarrels with Gates, rode onto the field anyway and led charge after charge. Nightfall ended the battle with both sides holding their ground, but Burgoyne had lost 600 men, far more than he could afford. October 7 brought the second battle at Bemy's Heights. Burgoyne tried again to break through. Again the Americans held. Arnold, still unsanctioned by Gates, charged at the head of a brigade and shattered the British right. His horse was shot from under him. His leg was crushed, but the line broke. Burgoyne retreated to Saratoga. There he found himself surrounded. Militia swarmed in from every direction. Lincoln's New Englanders blocked the road north. Morgan's riflemen and Dearborn's light infantry harassed his flanks. Supplies dwindled. Winter loomed. On October 13, Burgoyne asked for terms. On October 17, 1,777 5,800 British and Hessian troops laid down their arms, the largest surrender of European soldiers on foreign soil in a century. The news reached Europe like a cannon shot. In Paris, Vergennes smiled. In London, Lord North's ministry reeled. In Philadelphia, Congress heard the tidings and dared to hope the war might yet be won. Saratoga was more than a battle. It was proof that the Continental Army, ragged and outnumbered, could defeat a professional force in open field. It convinced France that America was worth the risk. Within months the formal alliance would come: troops, ships, money, the weight of a great power on the American side. Yet the cost had been terrible. Men lay in shallow graves from Valker Island to Bemy's Heights. Arnold limped away on crutches, his leg shattered, his pride wounded. Gates took the credit, though many knew who had really won the day. Schuyler, the man who had prepared the ground, was forgotten by most. Still, the campaign had changed everything. The British plan to split the rebellion had failed. The Hudson Corridor remained American, and across the Atlantic, statesmen who had watched with detached interest now began to calculate the price of supporting a people who refused to be conquered. The war would drag on for 4 more years, years of Valley Forge, Southern disasters, treason, mutiny. But after Saratoga, the end was no longer unthinkable. A new nation had stood its ground and forced an empire to blink, and somewhere on the Hudson's banks, in the cold autumn rain, the future of the United States began to take shape not in grand declarations, but in the stubborn courage of farmers, riflemen, and one-legged generals who simply would not yield.